so good to see you. As always, I'm excited to talk to you today. And I know that you believe that retirement planning is easier when you follow 3 simple steps. So I want to know those steps. And also, you mentioned the phrase Retire Palooza. What is that? And do I get a t-shirt?
No, they're I know that sounds like quite an event, doesn't it?
It does.
Retire Palooza. I will get to that in a second. You mentioned 3 steps to retirement. I really try to simplify things. I always think retirement is it's simple, but not easy. Simple in that we can understand the different categories that we should think about, but it's not easy in that there are a million different factors and variables within each category. So what we're going to be doing in this series, Retire Palooza, which I'll explain in a second, what we're going to be doing is concentrating on 3 general areas with a lot of meat, a lot of information within these areas. The first one is, what does retirement look like? And we're going to spend more time on that one today. Number 2, what will it cost? So that we know that whatever we want to do in retirement, and some of it is healthcare and things like that we don't necessarily want to do, but it does all cost something. So we have to think about that. And then the last but not least is how are we going to pay for it? And that's about money. All right, so we'll hit on that a lot. I want to create, Aaron, a bit of a course, if you will. So I'm calling it Retire Palooza. I know that in Chicago, you remember from Chicago, there's Lollapalooza. It is a giant event. My son has gone many years in a row. This is Retire Palooza. And when you look up Palooza, it means a big event. And I can't think of a bigger event for people who might be watching these videos than retirement. So that's how I came up with that. And in today's video, we will talk a lot about what Retire Palooza will be, what will it include, and how we're going to try to create a meaningful experience for everybody.
Right. And keep it fun, though, too, which is what I always appreciate about working with you, Darryl. So let's get into the nitty-gritty right now. The first step, as you mentioned, is to figure out what retirement looks like. What does that mean exactly?
I think that if you can't or won't visualize retirement, you're not going to do anything to help you get there. And so I'm going to tell you a very quick, all my running stories have some element of sadness to them. I don't even know if you've heard this one, Aaron, but I ran a marathon when I was 13. It took like 5 hours. I walked a lot of it, but the reason I finished it because I was 13, I didn't know what else to do except to try to make my way to the finish line, try to find wherever my father was. Get a ride home. But when I graduated college, I tried to run marathons, and I ran 3 in a row. And I dropped out of each of them. Now, I'm giving you the abridged version. I know that after the second marathon, my friends were starting to have a little bit of a field day with me. I remember one said, I think my buddy Roddy said, did you see that 9-year-old girl that crossed the finish line? What an inspiration. It was kind of ugly. And after 3, I left the sport behind. And I was having trouble surviving what I call the middle miles, which is the part of the race where the excitement of the start has faded, but you can't yet imagine the taste of the finish line. And I think that a lot of us in many of our pursuits find ourselves in the middle miles. We're far enough in, but we still have a long way to go to achieve our goals. So long story made somewhat bearable. I didn't run for many years, and then I got the itch to do it again. But I knew I had to do something a little bit different because what I had done those prior 3 years wasn't working. So here's what I did, and I warn you, it's about to get very weird. It's gonna be weird.
Thanks for the warning.
Yes, you're welcome. The day before the marathon, I dressed up as I would be the next day. I put on the same shoes and socks, shorts that were probably in retrospect a little bit too short, tank top, hat, shades, and even a medal from some 5K that I had run. And I went to the finish line, and I dragged my very favorite first wife, Jill, with me. As you like to point out, Aaron, my current wife, Jill.
Jill's the best. You definitely married up. We all know that.
The first wife. And we went to the finish line, and I stood at the finish line, and I, they were setting up all the scaffolding for the race the next day. And I threw my arms up in the air, and I let out a primal scream, and Jill took a picture. And that's strangely the picture that's hanging in our living room right now. never
Right.
mind.
Life-size picture, I'm sure.
We got the picture developed at the 1 hour photo, which I know dates me. I finally had an image of what it looked like for me to cross the finish line, for me to stand there. I know that was the day before the race. I remember that some people looked at me as if I lost my mind. And at that point, I wasn't sure. But we had that picture, and I looked at it over and over and over that night, carbo loading all the pasta throughout the middle of the night, keep getting up to use the bathroom because you're supposed to hydrate in the morning, dry toast and a banana. I'm looking at the picture over and over. Finally, you get to gear check, you give your bag away, took one last look. When I got to those middle miles during that race, and I wanted to stop because that's when my mind was shut off. And if your mind starts going haywire, it goes through your body, your legs get heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I drew upon what that picture looked like, and I kept going. And at the 25-mile mark in a marathon, if you've ever seen it or been there, you see people that are in all states of happiness or unhappiness. Some people are smiling and preening for the camera. Some people are walking and talking to their legs as if to say, if you just can go one more mile, I promise we will never do this again.
Right.
And I was not, it wasn't a bed of roses, but I ended up finishing that marathon. And after that point, I ran 8 or 9 other marathons. I ran Boston, New York, all the big ones, and I never had a problem again. The point of it is, I have this philosophy, see the finish line.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I could draw upon what that looked like that I was able to get through it. And as we transition back from my sad running stories, all of them seem to involve some embarrassment of some sort. Bless you.
This is nothing to sneeze at. Sorry.
As I go back to, we'll keep that in there. We will not edit that out, Aaron. As I think about that and retirement, it occurs to me that if we can't bring up some kind of vision of what that next chapter looks like, we're just not going to do anything. We're not going to plan in any way. So that's why I think it's so important for us to talk at first about what does it look like, the future.
And you often say, as you mentioned the future, that you and your future self are the same person. What does that mean to you?
Well, we're not different people. We're the same people. And I think that there's, and maybe we wouldn't come out and say this, but I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'll just let him, that guy, figure it out in 20 years, right? But that guy is you.
Yeah.
It's you. It's not a different person. I know intuitively we know this, right? We know that we're the same person, but when we think about decisions as they relate to that person, which is you, then we're going to be more likely to take the process seriously. It's not that complicated what we should do. It's often just getting started.
Right. So you also mentioned most human behavior is drawn by short-term results. And that's the theme that I'm hearing you say. It's so hard to think about the future in terms of how it relates to us now, right?
I just bought a new TV, Aaron.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'll use it in good health. I didn't need a new TV. The other one was acting a little weird, but that might have been the cable box. I don't know. My son went to Apt. For those of you who are not from Chicago, Apt is a giant.
That is great. Yeah.
App's amazing. It's a superstore of fun electronics, giant operation. So my son Ben bought some stuff. He's moving out, and the next day we went back and I bought a TV. And so I think when you're thinking about your future self, you are more caught up in the current urgent goals and what have you. And I so did I need that TV? No. Will I be unhappy 20 years from now that I bought the TV? I probably won't be thinking about it, but it was an example of being in the short term and thinking, wouldn't it be great to have a new TV? Rather than I'd rather have that $1,000 and the growth of it later on. I do believe that the greater the quality is of the connection with your future self, the better your life will ultimately be in the future. So I think that we have to keep that in mind, that we are the same person, and the decisions we make, right? It's the same with eating, right? That extra piece of pizza, the ice cream. Ben and my wife Jill are laughing at me because I keep trying to find like a sorbet that's got like 70 calories in the whole pint, and I keep buying the wrong kind because it's some of them don't have the caloric. I'm not taking into account the servings, right? So, so when we think about like what we're eating, what we're doing now, it all has an effect on the future. It is the same person.
Right. But the hard part sometimes is trying to determine, the hard part and the important part is trying to determine what will make your future self happy.
Right. And it's not necessarily good stuff that we're thinking about. We talk all the time about long-term care insurance, and we'll talk a little bit about that during this course, because you can't talk about end of life and that without talking about what might happen with your ability to do the activities of daily living. When we talk about long-term care insurance like that's a perfect example, Aaron, of like I am, when I ask somebody to reallocate money from this bucket, money sitting in a CD, to this bucket, money that is growing for long-term care in the future, I'm asking them to envision that needing that care. That's no fun, right? Yeah. So when we're younger, we think about like, let's say people have I'm not like a vision board type of person, but I know that there are people who are like have a vision board, and maybe the vision board has a picture of a country I've never been to. I don't even know where it is. Tahiti. Let's say they have Tahiti or Bali or one of these places that seems very far away and is always sunny and tropical, so they have a picture. That's fun to think about, right? If I think that my future self, if I'm 26, wants to spend time in Bali, wants to see Bali, do what is necessary today, tomorrow, the next day to see Bali. Unfortunately, in retirement planning, it's not the same, because a lot of what we're thinking about is not pleasant.
Right.
But while we're cognitively able, me, let's say 58, to think about these things, we want to be able to connect them to what's going to happen in the future.
So what should we be thinking about?
Well, we're thinking about certainly the different categories of what might happen in retirement. So we're going to think about travel. We're going to think about whether we want to spend time with family, how we want to spend time with family, which elements of our family. Mm-hmm. So for example, we think about family, right? I want to take my family places, but not, I want to take Josh and Danny and Ben. And I'll even let Jill come with, and like and their significant others, and like but that's in the vision. See, the vision, Aaron, is I'd love to go see the Tour de France, like that bike race in France. I'd love to go see the tour. There's a mountain stage, Alpe d'Huez. It's 17 hairpin turns. It's like the riders, world-class professional riders, can barely make it up the hill. It's just scenery is incredible. I want to go there, but I want to take my family there too. So I think about things like that. That's some of the crystallization. If we might volunteer, that kind of thing. Hobbies, values, and our passions, fitness, health, and happiness. So these are sort of all categories we're going to cover in Retire Palooza, because they're all really important. Legacy. What do we want to leave? How do we want to leave it? Do we want to see? One big part of legacy is, do you want to give money to your kids? If you have money left over, do you want to give it to your kids? Or do you want, after you've passed, or do you want them to experience some of it while you're alive? You get to see them. I've spoken, one of my sons is going to go to graduate school, and I want to help him with that. Some might say, well, you already paid for college. Fine. But I want to help with graduate school too. But I want to see him enjoy my help. I can easily say, just spend your money, you'll get it later. But I want to see that. Right. So legacy is very important. And then I always talk about the overarching goal. Always, Aaron. The overarching goal is to spend money while you're younger and healthier. And people often say, well, wouldn't you spend too much and not have enough left over? There are ways to do both. It involves planning. But at the end of the day, it's funny. I've mentioned, Aaron, that I'm going to have knee surgery at some point. So I'm got to go to this doctor and this opinion and that opinion. And it's not like, I'm not like an NBA basketball player, but it's where, I need to be able to cut and jump and dunk.
Yeah. Go Timberwolves.
Right. Go Timberwolves. Too short. I think they're down though. Too short to dunk. But the point is that I want to be able to experience life before it all becomes doctor's appointments. Right? You go near the hospital near here right now on whatever day it is, Thursday morning, and like you can't get near the building because of everybody that's going there for their medical tests and what have you. So I do want to. I'm always thinking about, is there a way for us to be able to spend a little more when you're younger and healthier? For sure.
Right. And I know you say that all the time, and it's part of your book, and I think it's an important philosophy, but why is it so important to you?
Because, I think life is, doesn't go on forever. And I think, I try to walk a lot, try to be outside. It's sunny here in Chicago now. The weather's a little bit better. I just think that, it changes. It changes for a lot of people very quickly. So, and then the other thing is that I think that and this is beyond the scope of this video, but I think people don't understand how, let me try to do this visually just a little bit with my hands. If you think about retirement spending increasing with inflation, kind of going like a little bit of a hockey stick, increasing with inflation, let's say 2.5% per year. What happens down the line is that whatever that inflated number is, whatever you start at, and if you start at $60,000, $5,000 a month, when you're 65, and then that number is going to inflate a little bit. What happens at the end is that absent health care, just take a long-term care situation out for a second, you're not going to spend as much money. We see it with our parents. We see it with people as they age. They stop spending money. They're just not able to travel and do that kind of thing. Now, the wild card is medical. That comes in at the end. That's why one of the reasons I'm so passionate about, like, take a little bit of money and squirrel it away for long-term care, let an insurance company grow it, effectively guarantee you a benefit. Then what happens is you can have more license upfront to spend money a little bit, not a ton, a little bit here and there, so that you can enjoy life more. We know that by natural spending, the other thing about inflation, Aaron, is that people adjust to inflation. And we talk about inflation. And I always say, like, not a single client of mine asked me for more money during the inflationary 21, 22, 23, even through now, even though prices are moderating a little bit. Nobody asked because people adjust and that. So, but that's why it's so important to me to be a little more active when you're younger and healthier.
Mm-hmm. So, Darryl, let's walk through then some of the topics that we're going to cover in future episodes.
Sure. So for this category of sort of the what does retirement look like, we're going to cover leaving a lasting impact beyond your lifetime. We're going to talk about charitable giving and philanthropic endeavors. We're going to talk a little bit and this is a specific module about aligning your personal values with legacy planning goals so you can maximize your impact. We're going to talk about working in retirement, partial retirement, the effect on Social Security of doing that. We're going to talk about part-time work options, freelancing opportunities, entrepreneurship, and we're going to have a little bit on the tips for transitioning from full-time work to fulfilling retirement career. That's sort of all that dovetails into creating your ideal post-work life and how that all comes together. My dad was very tied to our family business, which we sold in 2007. And as a result, when he retired, he really didn't have anything. I always kind of joke about this. He talked about basketball and the street he grew up on. And
Division Street, right?
Division Street, right? Exactly. I've told you this so many times there, and that's sad to me. Like, that's Well, now he has dementia, so it's not really talking about anything, but that's it. So we want to talk about hobbies, passions, travel aspirations, social connections, volunteer opportunities, community involvement. My wife runs the Deerfield Food Pantry. She deals with a lot of volunteers, and that's good for people. Strategies for maintaining work-life balance, and then we're going to talk about understanding how physical health influences your well-being. I'm very much into fitness. I'm trying to have a better diet. My new thing is asparagus. I'm eating asparagus every
How's that
meal.
a new thing? Asparagus is great.
It's new for me, right? But I think the new part is that I could conceivably just eat it for dinner and that's it.
Well, you're lucky you're not in our house because it's mandatory with our kids.
Oh well, right. But with the lemon pepper, oh, it's so good. Okay. So I'm talking about a little bit of that mental health. I'm even going to talk a little bit about mindfulness and meditation, even though if you know me, you know that that's probably a very hard thing for me. The way my body moves, my mind moves. I think mental health is really important. Incorporating healthy habits, and so I want to spend a lot of time on those types of activities and important action items for the future.
Right. So this is a good time just to remind everybody who's watching that with all this great content coming up, it is very easy just to subscribe so that you can get those notifications and you know when these topics that are important to you are coming up. But let's move on to another really important component, Darryl, which is figuring out how this good living, how much is it going to cost?
Well, right. That's important, isn't it? Yes. That's important. So we're going to focus on three specific areas: the essential costs of the basic living costs, healthcare, and taxes. And so if we talk about that briefly, Aaron, here's a thing that I want everybody to know. This is super important. I've used a lot of different retirement planning systems that I use to help my clients. At the end of the day, if you're not conceptualizing a budgetary number, essential cost number, without taking into account taxes and healthcare, you're really missing the boat. If you have a lot of money in IRAs or 401ks or a large percentage of your overall wealth, you have yet to pay tax on those monies. So that's going to hit you. And healthcare is more than people think between Medicare Part A, Part B, Part D, Medicare Advantage, or supplemental, Medigap, out of pocket, all of that stuff. So what I want people to think about is that if you're, so Aaron, if you say to me, I need $6,000 a month to live on in retirement. And if we're not on the same page, if we're thinking about this, I say, well, have you considered taxes and healthcare? No, I need $6,000 to live on. Well, you actually need $7,500 a month to live on. So in the analysis, if I'm not doing it in a way that gives you the $6,000 for spending, then we're not on the same page. Mm-hmm. We are not on the same page. So we have to think about healthcare and taxes, and we have to have that be below the line, if you will, or actually strike that above the line, so that if you say 6,000. Then I'm going to get you 6,000, or maybe I'll tell you you can't have 6,000. You can only have 5,000 based upon what you have. But we want to think about it that way.
Right. Which comes back to making sure your money lasts as long as you do in retirement to account for those essential costs. Darryl, what kind of lessons do we have scheduled for this module?
So we have something on budgeting. So for sure, something on budgeting. Actionable, but we want to give actionable advice to help you maintain your financial stability and peace of mind. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about budgeting from what should go in it, what kind of trade-offs should be made, what's realistic. So we'll spend a lot of time on that, a sustainable budget. We're going to talk about taxes. We're going to tax planning, understanding the tax implications of withdrawals, how we take money out. So some of these topics go hand in hand with the third overall category, which is how we're going to pay for all this. But with the taxes, right, there's different accounts. There's a mathematically ideal amount of money that should be in all these different accounts. There's a withdrawal rate or how much money we take out that needs to be considered. There are different.
Briefly, though, real quick, Darryl, it's so much more complicated than the 4% rule, which a lot of us hear, right?
Right. So yeah, well, the 4% rule. So let's touch up on that a little bit. The 4% rule. I think it was an accountant in the 90s.
Bill Bengen.
William Bengen. Oh God, Aaron, you didn't know that 3 years ago. That I can tell you.
So what if I didn't know it 3 years ago? I know it now.
I know, right? I know. I'm marveling at your knowledge. William Bengen, he came up with this 4% rule. He says, if you spend 4% of your money every year, it should last 30 years. But so think about that. That's a straight line. And what that means is you're not going to spend more money when you're younger and healthier.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem for me. So we have to be more intuitive on that. And, so it could be that we say, like in my plan, I throw in a number, but by the way, I want to try to understand how much money we need to live on, somebody needs to live on, and start at that point, not some arbitrary rule of thumb based upon, do you want to choose do you want to have your future rely on a rule of thumb? Let's say it together. No. We don't want, we almost got it together. We don't want, we'll work on that. We could probably edit that together, but we're not going to. I don't see any real editing yet so far. I think we're doing really well.
It's almost like you're a professional.
I don't think so. There is an ideal way to do it. It's not so ideal if you want to enjoy life. So we're certainly going to talk a lot about that, and we're also going to talk about healthcare and retirement for sure, long-term care, Medicare, and that. As I mentioned, actually I didn't mention this, but the average 77-year-old is going to spend $1,000 a month for healthcare. And the example I use is that if he or she says, well, I want to spend $5,000 a month on basic living expenses, are they counting the healthcare or not counting the healthcare? My guess is they're not, which means it's above. So then they actually need $6,000. So we're going to talk about Medicare a lot, because Medicare is obviously, it's interesting. I maybe it's not interesting, but I'm going back and forth to these doctors. My health insurance is terrible. I'm self-employed, so I've got this giant deductible. And I talked with a client this morning who has to have some shoulder surgery, and I asked, "What have you paid so far?" He's on Medicare. He's like, zero. So I know he's paying Medicare premiums and all that, but it's the out-of-pocket stuff, all of that stuff. So we're going to talk about we're going to talk about that. So taxes, healthcare, budgeting, and that.
Do we need to mention budgeting one more time?
Well, I think that I don't know. I want people to be able to spend money. We need to start somewhere. We need to have a basic understanding. I want people to be able to, cut costs where they can without sacrificing comfort. So we'll have some tips for that. We need to plan for the unexpected, for sure. And we need to have a plan that allows for us to have some financial flexibility. So yes. Now, I'm done talking about budgeting. There's no more talking about budgeting. I don't care what you say.
So, Darryl, it's clear that we need to create that detailed vision of our retirement and determine the financial cost. So the next area of concentration then is, how do we get there? How do we pay for it all?
Right. So this is the money part. So we're going to talk about Social Security. We'll do a whole video on Social Security. We're going to talk about market volatility and how we invest for market volatility, diversification strategies, investment options, managing risk, and staying resilient in the face of market fluctuations. I know that's not easy, but it is super important. We're going to talk about inflation, longevity risk, and other financial pitfalls. We'll have a module on that. Understanding retirement savings vehicles. This sort of goes hand in hand with the taxes, which we're going to talk about a little bit here and a little bit under expenses, contribution limits, employer matches, tax implications. And we will also talk about building a solid retirement income strategy, because it's not the wealth that maintains your standard of living, it's the income. So we're going to hit on that, sustainable withdrawal rates and what have you. And those are the topics as we get to, and we're going to intersperse them all. So we're not going to go from one to the other to the other. We're going to just hit different topics as we go along the summer in Retire Palooza.
Do I get a t-shirt?
There are no t-shirts. There are no t-shirts. If we get 30 million views, I will print you a t-shirt.
All right. To all my friends and family, though. But, really, Darryl, what's fun when we talk this through is it's apparent that we can all come to the conclusion that we see the components that are necessary to put the puzzle together to create a happy retirement, right? But each puzzle piece is going to be different for everybody. But talking this through with you helps us visualize how it's different and unique, right?
Right. Why? Everybody's different and the advice is so standardized. And I think that's a problem. I mean, I ultimately, when you speak to somebody one-on-one, you learn their challenges and that. But I think that we can start out by saying, what are the big picture categories? What does retirement look like? What it's going to cost? How are we going to pay for it? But nothing is more important, in my view, than taking the time to really look up into the distance, that way or that way, into the distance, into your mind's eye, to see what does this whole thing look like. That helps you take some of the necessary action steps to get there.
And again, just to remind everybody who's watching, the easiest way to stay up to date is just be sure you like and subscribe, turn on those notifications so that you can be alerted when we are covering each of these separate topics. As Darryl mentioned, we'll be bringing them to you periodically over the summer. And this is something that I'm really looking forward to, Darryl. Thank you so much for coming up with Retire Palooza.